Hi, greetings, everybody. Welcome to our Rising Wednesdays. My name is Yadira Ortiz. You can call me Yadi. I'm the director of Pre-Health Dreamers, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about Financial Literacy 101. I really hope that a lot of younger students that are just starting out, who are, still considering on the degrees that they're going to be seeking or starting this journey, get this information earlier on. I think everybody needs it. I'm still learning on a daily basis just about finances, and just how to get through all of that. So I really wish I would have learned a lot of this information earlier on, coming from immigrant parents. This is usually something that we don't learn right away. We usually learn it down the road, and sometimes when we're already in difficult situations. So I really hope that this information can get to individuals before they even need it, right? And just make note of it, that the information is here, and start researching so that when that time comes, you can really be able to handle any situation or financial situation that comes your way with a little bit more ease. Not that it's not difficult, but it'll be a little bit easier. So we're doing Rising Wednesdays every Wednesday at noon on Facebook Live. And just a reminder, if you're not able to catch us on Facebook Live, you can always go to our new YouTube channel. Just look under Pre-Health Dreamers and you'll find all of the videos that we've done, plus more from previous years or previous month on there. So please visit us and we can go ahead and get started. And so I just want to give a little bit of background in regards to health careers that are available at the educational level. I just really want to create that setting for you. What to look forward to first, we're going to talk a little bit about the scary stuff, the funding, the money, how much everything's going to cost, so that then we can kind of talk about later on how to prepare a little bit better for it. So let's just take a look at the health careers. There's so many health careers out there that individuals can pursue, and they're also at various levels. So just for example, you could be a nurse with an associate's degree, with a bachelor's degree, move up into your master's degree, and even down the road get a doctoral degree as a nurse. Yes, it's going to cost more money, and the tuition's going to get higher as you move up in degree levels. So associate degree, of course, is going to be a lot more affordable per se than a doctoral degree, as well as any of the other degrees that exist. If you see the screen, you'll see the associate's degree. All of the degrees here, you'll see a variation, like a scale. So really what the scale is, it's going to depend, like let's just take again, nursing, for example. An associate's degree in nursing is going to be from $12,000 to $35,000 for that tuition. The difference why that gap exists, or why that just kind of those two different variations of tuition exist, it's because it's going to depend, is your institution a public or a private? Of course, public institutions, their tuition tend to be more affordable. So that's why we're more on the $12,000 end, whereas private institutions may be on the higher end. And again, this is for all of the ones that you see on your screen. What also makes the difference between the lower end of the tuition rather than the higher end, is it a private institution? And also, are you being charged in-state tuition or out-of-state tuition? So that can always make the difference between the $12,000 for nursing, associates in nursing, to a $35,000 tuition in nursing, whether you're being charged, your school's charging you in-state or out-of-state. You always want to check with your school way in advance to see how they're going to be coding you. Are you going to be coded as in-state tuition? Does your school provide, or does your state provide that type of policy that allows you to be coded as an in-state tuition or be charged in-state tuition fees? Usually there's requirements for that if that state has that type of policy in place and implemented to help support undocumented students. Or the state may not have such bills. So they're going to be charging everybody that non-resident tuition. And then some schools, you may be that first undocumented student that steps into their campus. They may not know how to even really assess your tuition. So they might be saying, hey, you're a non-resident, or we might even put you down as an international student. Down the road, we might talk about international students and what that means, the pros and the cons of it. But these are things that really make a huge difference on your tuition. So is it a public or private? What level are you going to be doing? Is it an associate's degree, a bachelor's, a master's, or doctoral? And then also you're going to be charged in state or out of state. So that's why that 12,000 to 35,000 exists for nursing. Let's take clinical lab technician, you have 17 to 44,000. And then we jump down to doctoral degrees. Medicine can be anywhere from 148,000 to 248,000 for that tuition. So there's so many different variables that exist on why that tuition can be as high as it is. Other than tuition, we also want to think about other variables that are included in those expenses that you have to prepare for as you're planning to apply or attend to your programs, right? Other than your tuition, you may have other fees, right? So do you have to take an entrance exam? What are those fees about? It varies whether it's a dental school, whether it's the DAT for dental school admissions, or if it's for the MCAT for medical school, or is it an associates? Do they even really need an entrance exam? And if they do, that cost might be even a little bit lower than those higher level programs. But you want to research that early on to see what the exam fees are, application fees sometimes, especially once you get higher in your professional programs, you're going to have to do your application fee, like your main application fee. And then based on school, you may have to submit a secondary application where there's fees there as well. Also, as you advance, you are also going to be doing more interviews. So especially into the professional programs, you may have to interview in person, or now with everything that's going on with COVID, you may have to do it online. But professional attire is something also that you want to start looking for. There's different ways to even kind of get resources for that. Sometimes your school, maybe the career center, may have a closet for folks that where you can either rent or borrow, or have the clothes that they have. Or you can ask family if you don't have the finances in place to be able to find a really good suit for your interviews. But if you start thinking about it early and are able to save up that funding to get yourself a really nice suit, once you get into that professional program level or internship and you want to go interview, you feel very confident when you're walking into that office or that department. So it's something also you want to think about and include in your budget. Also, right now, because of COVID, we're not traveling as much, but hopefully once all of this, hopefully it passes, you'll be able to travel again. And a lot of times for professional programs, you will have to travel to go to the different schools to interview. So you also want to take that into consideration, your bus, your flight, if it's a school down the street, how much is that going to cost if you don't have a vehicle? And also once you move, I always tell students, like, check the rent. A lot of times when you're a new student, that first year, especially as undergrad students, if you're moving to a school farther out that's not around your home, they may make it mandatory that you have to live on campus. Like, you cannot live off of campus. So you want to see what the rent's going to be for you. If you do have the option to live off of campus, you want to look at off campus rent and see how much that is. Sometimes even on Facebook groups, I know Facebook is sometimes a little bit, people are not using it as much now, but you can still find sometimes those groups of students that have a closed group where you can find rooms for rent. Rather than living on campus, it can also be more affordable. So just a little bit of additional fees that you may want to start adding to that list of future funding that may be necessary. Now let's talk about financial aid. Every state is different in regards to the financial aid that they provide to the students. Of course, we all know that undocumented students or students under TPS or DACA do not qualify for FAFSA. However, there are many states that have now trying to implement state financial aid for students. So you want to check to see if your state is one of them. Of course, California, we have the California Dream Act. Washington, the state of Washington is another location that also has state financial aid for undocumented students. New York, Texas, Oregon, New Jersey, Colorado. There may be more, but those are the ones we have listed as of right now. So you want to double check with your school to see if they have that financial aid. You want to check early to see what their deadlines are. I know with financial aid applications, it's really strict. So other than applying, you really want to make sure that you're meeting all of the deadlines in advance to ensure that you don't lose out on that money. I know a lot of financial aid offices, you miss one document, one deadline, and they will not be packaging you for financial aid for that year. And that's really put students in a sticky situation. So you really want to do the research early on and make sure that you meet all of the deadlines, have good communication with your financial aid office to make sure that you're getting the package that you really need and that you qualify for. Other than state aid, if your state has state aid for undocumented students, there's also something called institutional aid. So it's two different things. State aid comes from the state funding. Institutional aid, that's financial aid that your institution has a different account for that they can provide financial aid for you, whether it be in scholarships or other institutional grants. So you want to talk to your schools to see, other than state aid, if that exists in my state, also what institutional aid exists on my campus. Usually institutional aid is great because they might cover more than what you think. And there's different ways to get institutional aid. Most of the time you have to submit that one application, then they'll let you know what you qualify for. You have your need-based institutional aid, which is based on the income of you and your family. And then you also have merit-based. So merit-based, usually it's more based on your grades or your academic background. And so sometimes they have both. So you really want to ask that as well. You want to really prepare and get ready to apply for that state aid if it's available in your state, and institutional aid as well, because that's going to be what, for sure, money, if you meet all the qualifications and follow through, that's going to be money and free money that you don't have to pay back. Usually folks are always sharing scholarships, which I think they are a great resource. However, I just want to make people kind of aware that scholarships are never for emergency, or don't think as scholarships for emergency. They're always for future support or future reference. So if your tuition is due in a month or 2 months, or tomorrow, a scholarship is probably not the best way to go because you have to do the application and then it takes time for that funding to hit your account. So you always want to apply for scholarships, research scholarships, but make note that they're not for emergency mode. They're going to be for the future. So you want to start that scholarship early on. You know, I always tell students, go ahead, get your calendars ready, search for scholarships and put them on your dates. You know, mark them on the date that they're due and start working on them early. If the date already passed, make sure you put that date for next year and just keep checking your calendar and take, you know, a day or two from your month to submit one scholarship for the future academic year. Pre-Health Dreamers, on our website, we do have our scholarship list there. Most of them are geared for students who are pursuing health-related professional programs or undergraduate health-related programs, and they don't require citizenship. So you want to take a look at our phdreamers.org website for more information. Also, a lot of individuals don't know that schools may have institutional loans. In California, we do have dream loans that are available to undocumented students. That option is going to vary by state as well. Look into your state to see if they have them available. Once you get more into the graduate level and professional program level, your institution may also have loans. However, you want to talk to them early. With all of this, with the institutional aid and with the institutional loans, you want to talk to them early And the reason for that is once you get higher, like probably even dental school, physical therapy, a lot of the private institutions, you may be the first undocumented student that steps on their campus. And the reality is that a lot of educators and staff members in financial aid and admissions, they're still learning on how to work with undocumented students. So that conversation may need to happen first. And unfortunately, the student may have to initiate it and say, hey, I'm applying to your school. What does your institutional aid look like? Is it available to undocumented students, to students without a status who are not US citizen? And if not, we want to ask why, right? Because institutional aid usually is not federally funded. It's money that the school puts the requirements on. So you want to check with them and see what's going on and have that conversation of institutional aid and institutional loans can be made available to you. This is when advocacy is really important. So there is in-state tuition, if available, probably. But there's also fee assistance programs. So every time you're submitting an application, make sure that you are very detailed with your fee waivers, because any mistake can really, deny any fee waiver that you may have access to. So you want to be really careful and ask around. Ask before you apply and pay that money. Ask to see if they have one available and what are the requirements. Sometimes for fee waivers, one of the requirements is that you do have to have permanent residency or citizenship. Again, contact the school, see what's going on, because again, you may be the first undocumented student and they may not be aware that a student may need that fee waiver who is undocumented, and they may have the flexibility and option to fee that way for you. So you always, again, communication and advocacy is key. You also want to talk their language. So when you talk to them, you really want to understand that they may not know what DACA is. So if you're a DACA recipient and you call an admissions office or a financial aid office and say, hey, I'm a DACA recipient or I'm undocumented, even though you have DACA, they may not know what that means. And right away, they might say, oh, we don't have financial aid for you. So it's going to take a little bit more explaining and really talking to them about what the language means. This also is important when you're talking about internships. So if you contact them and say, hey, I have DACA, they may not know what it is and may deny you just because they're not aware. And they haven't taken the time to really learn that, right? Or haven't been able to prioritize it. What you always want to use is their language. Instead of saying DACA, you say, I have employment authorization. So I should be able to do that internship if it's, there's no federal restrictions to it. Or that institutional aid, I do have, a social, or if you don't, hey, this is institutional aid. Why isn't it available to me as an undocumented student if it's not federal funding, right? You always want to do those continuing questions to the staff. Employment, also, you can always find jobs at your campus. I think finding jobs on campus is amazing because they tend to be very flexible for you. The only difficult part sometimes is those are through work study, which is the federally funded program. So sometimes they close them. However, more and more schools are finding ways to create work study for that comes out of state aid or comes out of their institutional aid. So again, just put that seed into their mind of, hey, I may need these resources. How can we make this available for me there at your campus? Something that folks feel like it's really new, which is crowdfunding. I don't see it as a new resource. I see it as a really old school resource. Um, Back when I was in high school, we would even do crowdfunding, but it was done differently. So we didn't have Facebook back then. We didn't have any of these other platforms where you can do self fundraising. Really, you did your portfolio, you put your resume in there, you put photos of you doing your sport activities or your, after school activities that you were joining, and you would go and take it to your teachers and, your family members and say, hey, can you please donate to my, my tuition for next year? So it's not a new thought. It's just done in a differently. And we see it more now than we did before, but it's actually something that's been done for a very long time. So again, crowdfunding, sometimes it can help, sometimes not. But I think the most important thing with crowdfunding is really having connections and having the voice to really put it out there and having that effort. So it does take a lot. So I would always suggest leave it until you're able to dot your I's and cross your T's with all of the other resources that may be a little bit more sure than crowdfunding or scholarships. I just want to just remind everybody, and I keep saying it because I just think it's so vital. Advocacy is really important. Somebody told me a long time ago, if you know, a closed mouth does not get fed. And I just want to remind our students that, you know, counselors, staff members at universities, they don't know really what's going on, especially with each individual student. The more you talk to the staff members, I was a staff member at universities for a very long time. So students would come into my office all the time, tell me what was going on. They would always call me, always email me just to say hi. And I knew what was going on with them. So as I was at the store or I was somewhere and I would see a resource, I'd be like, oh, that one is for so and so. I remember, and I'll take a picture and send it to them. Like, hey, here's a job interview or a job position that might be available to you. Here's a scholarship. So you really want to make those connections and introduce yourself, and make sure, of course, make sure you're comfortable before you really start telling them, you know, about your status, or make sure that they're people that you feel comfortable with. But once you find those people that you connect with, just hang on to them, because they're really going to be the ones that keep you in mind when those resources and those doors open up. And they might put out, you know, just that invitation out to you. So we do have a personal script for you to introduce yourself to financial aid offices, admission directors. So reach out to me at yadi@phstreamers.org. That's YADI at phstreamers.org. Just see if we can get you a copy of this personal script so that you can start introducing yourself to individuals at your campus and start having these conversations. Negotiating is really important, especially, or it can be very vital and successful, and help finances sway your way, especially at private institutions. And once you hit that professional program and graduate program level. So really talking to the schools, and I think this really takes practice in pinpointing your strong points, pinpointing why you are so important to that school, pinpointing what value you're bringing to that school. We all know you're going to bring value, but it really takes work on the end of the student side to really acknowledge that. And I think a lot of times people of color or immigrants, we have a very difficult time kind of saying, yes, I'm great at this, I'm wonderful, I'm smart, I'm, you know, so I really want all the students to get comfortable with really emphasizing just a lot of the skills and a lot of the knowledge that they have and a lot of the value that they're going to bring to the campus, so that they can talk to those professional programs and say, hey, I need financial aid. You've accepted me. Can you help me seek financial aid in one way or another? And this is why. You know, really emphasizing your commitment to the school and to your acceptance and what you're going to be bringing in. If you need help with us, that again, reach out to us. There's so many tools out there for you to be able to start preparing your budget for the future. And I know this seems overwhelming. I've even tried it with my own kids. Like, try this budget form. Takes them forever to just do it, just because it feels so overwhelming. But if you need help with it, please reach out to us. But there's budget worksheets out there. We have our own at Pre-Health Dreamers, but there's also some that you can find online. That I know the AAMC has one. And later on, I'll put these in the chat for you. The links there so you can find them. But start looking to see what everything, you know, how much is my food going to cost for the month, my laundry, parking, entertainment. Does my school require that I get health benefits or insurance before I start there? So you want to just kind of start researching all of that. Now, let's really quick talk now about the basics when it comes to financial literacy. There's going to be so much to learn, but I want to introduce all of you. Maybe down the road, we can have a more detailed conversation when it comes to financial literacy. But loans and credit cards are going to be very vital as you move forward. And I know this is really scary for some, just because sometimes we don't know how to, one, apply, Two, what does that mean? What are the pros and cons of getting credit, whether it be a loan or a credit card? So I just want to introduce you a little bit to some of the vocabulary that exists and to look out for. So if you want to take a picture of the screen, go for it. But most credit cards and most loans do have annual fees. So when you take out a credit card or you take out a loan, based on how much you shop, and what your credit score is at the time that you get this account, will vary how much you probably pay on an annual basis. So sometimes you won't pay anything, and sometimes you'll pay $20 a year, sometimes maybe more. So be aware of that when you're applying for credit cards. Try to get some that don't have such a high annual fee, as well as the loans. Also, annual percentage rate, your APR, that's how much also you're going to be paying back. So if you take out $100 and you have an 18% APR, because and the APR sometimes is going to vary very much on what your credit score is. So the lower your credit score is, the higher that APR is. What that means is the higher the fee for you to borrow that money. So you're going to borrow money from Yachty. Yachty is going to charge you 18% because your credit score is lower. You're going to end up paying more than what you borrowed to me. The lower your credit score is, the lower that APR score is. Usually you want to be, for beginners, your score might be 18%. That's why I keep bringing 18% up. You want to get as low as possible. Okay. Credit, that's really just what the amount of money that folks are able to loan you, whether it's a bank, credit card, and so on. That's what your credit is. A credit limit is how much they're letting you borrow. Credit worthiness is a measure of one's ability and willingness to repay a loan. So kind of see your loan and your credit card as a relationship. You have to be in it. Are they going to trust you? Are they going to be able to lend you money and then lend you more, or have you fallen behind? And all of your credit worthiness is also going to depend on your scores, on your credit scores, right? You have all of these mathematical kind of models that create your credit scores, and we're going to show you a little bit what those variables may be. But usually you want to stay in the 700s in order to get lower APR scores, lower annual fees, and that just means that you're going to pay less at the end. Usually loans, you want to make sure that you look into your institution first, because school loans or institutional loans provided by your university, their annual fees or their APR is much lower than you're ever going to get at from a commercial loan, whether it be from a bank or a credit card company. So you always want to check that first. There's different types of scores. You have your FICO, TransUnion, and Equifax, Experian, right? And they're all going to be very different. So sometimes if you have your credit score and you have 3 different ones, it's because there's different companies doing your credit score, and there's different variables that they take into consideration. Some of them is just, very black and white, like this is how much they've borrowed, this is how many times they were late, this is how many accounts they have open. And then there are other ones that are a little bit more, they go a little bit more into your history and say, well, they have more of a story behind it. So you always want to check all of them and see when you're taking out either a loan or a credit card or a home or a car, which one is the one that they're looking at. But you always want to keep all 3 as strong as possible. And you'll see at the bottom, in the bottom, I have a couple of charts. So usually if you see on the left side, you'll see that like around 700 is starting to be good, as much as possible. And if you guys kind of have experience with your GPA, I want to kind of say that similarity. It's really easy to bring your GPA down, just like it is really easy to bring your credit score down. And then it's really hard to bring it back up. So again, it's like a relationship. Once you've broken that trust, it's really hard to regain it. So just see it in that way, your GPA and your credit score in those same ways. So you want to make sure you really keep track of it. And really having a higher score means paying less money back to folks. or not having to have such a high down payment on a vehicle or in a car down the road. So that's why your credit score is really important. And also having no credit cards is not going to help that credit score. Unfortunately, you kind of have to start playing that game and get into that credit to be able to build that credit score. It was something really hard for me to learn at a young age. I didn't want to take out credit cards. But I learned that I really had to in order to build that credit to be able to finance a vehicle, even finance a vehicle at a good price. So credit factors, what keeps your credit score high and what makes your credit score go low? So you always want to make sure you keep up with your payments, because I think that is actually one of the most important ones. So you always want to, especially once you start building credit, as soon as you get that first credit card or your first two credit cards, your first loan, really, you're going to have to keep a really good track record for the first 4 years in order for you to build really great credit. So during those 4 years, you don't want to go over 29% of utilization. What does that mean? So let's say you take out a credit card and you get $200 limit because you're new to credit cards. It's the first one you got out. So the company only gave you $200. Really, you should not be charging more than 29% on that card. So not more than $58. You probably want to even keep it lower than that, because remember, you're going to have finance charges. So if you charge 58 on it or $60, then that finance charge, that's going to start going over the 29% of usage. When you go over that 29% of usage, your credit score will start to go lower. So you always want to make sure when you have credit cards, don't try to use all of the limits that they gave you or all of the access to the funding they gave you, unless you really have to and it's an emergency. Also, checking your credit score all the time does not affect you as much as it used to back years ago. So always keep track of your credit score. Make sure that nobody's using your information. Also, that tends to happen. But again, making sure that you stay on good track will keep your APR really low. There's also increase. So again, checking your score doesn't always impact it as much as we think it does. But what does impact it is going over your 29% of usage for a very long time. If you say like, man, now I did spend more than I was supposed to, I went over that 30% average, you want to start paying them down if you can, just so that your credit score doesn't go lower. And then also when you're applying and you're getting credit cards or those bigger loans, that may affect your credit score for a bit, but as long as you keep making your payments on time, your credit score should go back up. So loan programs do exist in California. This is for institutions. So universities, public universities in California and Washington and in Texas do have loan programs for undocumented students. This includes your DACA and TPS. So if you're an undergrad, look into these right away. Once you get into the graduate level, these state financial aid for undocumented students tend to minimize the support that they provide. And it's kind of crazy because you owe more money or your tuition is higher, the higher you go, but the less money that is available for you by the state. But you still want to double check to make sure that, especially like in the public institutions in California, once you get into that graduate level, you may still have access to institutional aid through these applications for undocumented students, such as the California Dream Act. However, some of the funding may start minimizing, such as your Cal Grants. You don't qualify for Cal Grants in California once you graduate from undergraduate. As far as I know, I don't think it's changed, but things are always changing. But as far as I remember, the Cal Grants, after you graduate from your undergraduate, they're no longer available. But down the line, you may be able to still qualify for institutional aid. Loans and cosigners. For a lot of the credit cards, if you are undocumented or don't have a social security number, you may have to get a cosigner. And this is a really tough conversation to have. But what does that really mean? So if you apply for a credit card or a loan and you have to get a cosigner, it's sometimes really difficult. Number one, the conversation can be difficult, and scary. Number two, we sometimes don't know what that means for the cosigner, and I think that's where the fear comes from, right? So I think these conversations are really important if you are needing a cosigner. But aside from finding a cosigner who is a US citizen or a resident, sometimes what they're also looking for is that that other individual also has a high credit score. And that's sometimes also very difficult to find. So that's why it takes a lot of openness and real talk when you're trying to find a cosigner for yourself. What does it mean for a cosigner? If they're going to be signing off on your credit card or on your loan, it really means that they're going to be legally obligated to repay the loan in full or the credit card if you missed any payments or if you're not able to keep paying that debt. So that's why it can be a little bit scary. Again, open conversation is really important. The loan will appear on your credit score, and it can also appear on their credit score and affect their credit score. So just make them aware of that, let them know that that might happen. But again, as long as you continue to pay your credit card or loan, your credit score and their credit score should be going up. And it also increases the debt that you have. So if somebody cosigns for you, they're going above that percentage that they should be using, right, of the funding they should be using. So again, it makes their credit score go lower. But that's really what it means to be a cosigner, like in a quick summary. So it's really important to have these conversations. If it is with family members, I think it's really important to have not just a conversation, but sometimes an agreement between both parties. If somebody is helping you sign, make sure that they have access to your account so that, they don't have to ask you, hey, did you pay the loan this month or the credit card? Like that, because that gets it can create friction, right, between family members. So just make sure they have access to the account, make sure that they know that the payment and they can have that ease instead of having to have that conversation. And just let them know what's going on. If you do end up falling behind a little bit and say, hey, this month I'm going to be a little bit late, but what can we do? Is that okay? Do you want to pay it? And then I'll pay you back. Again, open conversation is really important when you're having this. In general, when you're applying for credit cards and for loans, usually it's online. And we'll talk about folks that don't have social security numbers. How do you apply for some? Because there are some available to you as well. If you have an ITIN number, there is access to loans and credit cards for you. But usually for a credit card or loan, you can apply online. You have a social security number, you turn that in. If you don't, you turn in your ITIN number, an updated passport or documentation. Sometimes your work permit will work if you have DACA or TPS. And then your cosigner, once necessary, once required, they also have to turn in sometimes that documentation as well. A few questions before you start signing any loans. You want to know what is the interest loan? So how much are you going to be paying back? Are you going to pay back 8%, or are you going to be paying back 18%, or are you going to be paying 30% back, more than what you took out? And does that change? So a lot of folks get into trouble because when they apply for the credit card, the interest rate is zero because they applied and there was a promotion going on. So the credit card gave you 0% interest for the first year. Let's just say that as an example. After the year, the promotion ended and you have a lot of, you've used up that credit card, but now just because that's how they work, your interest rate went up. So now it's going to be 5%, 10%, sometimes 18%. So now you're going to be owing more than what you thought you were. So always ask what that loan is and what does the repayment look like, and is that going to change? When do you start paying back your loan? Usually if you take out state dream loans for undocumented students. Again, only some states have this. You don't have to start paying them back until after you graduate. The same thing for some school loans that banks provide, but you always want to double check that when your start date for payment is. Is it when I'm in school or is it after? You always want to try to go for those that you don't have to start paying until you're done and you've graduated. You want to make sure what happens, if you're missing a payment or if you feel like you're going to be missing a payment, call them and just say, hey, this month is a little bit difficult. I think I'm going to be missing a payment. Can we just move my due date for a few days or a few weeks until I get that financing in? And then they'll be able to work with you rather than just letting it go and then your credit score drops. This is just a little example of what interest rates look like. Sometimes for undergraduate borrowers, it could be 2.75, sometimes 4%. For graduates. And then also the Dream Loan back in 2020, 2021, the interest rate was 2.75. Whereas sometimes for this other private, we won't name what it is, but for this private loan, it was 9.7%. So this is more of a commercial loan. This is more of, kind of more of your banks rather than a school paying back. So you can kind of see the difference. That's why we say try to go for the school loans first. There are loan repayment programs. However, most of the loan repayment programs are not available to a lot of undocumented individuals. But if you have DAC or TPS, even if you are without a social security number or status, you always want to double check because there's a lot of states passing policies that open up these loan repayment programs. So you just want to double check, but there are loan repayment. Usually what they consist of is once you get your degree, you're going to be asked, or the requirement is that you work in specific locations while they help you pay off your loans. I think this is really great for nurses as well. In California, we have the one that you see on your screen that helps with nurses, MDs, and other professions. You can also use credit monitoring. You can always use Credit Karma, Experian. There's the ones on your screen. If you look at the ones with the little asterisk next to them, like Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, those are welcomes folks that don't have social security numbers, but do have an ITIN number. And we'll talk about ITINs right now. But you can always check your credit score and start getting credit if you don't have a social. So the same thing that we were talking about in regards to credit scores for individuals with a social security number also applies to individuals with an ITIN. The big difference is instead of submitting a social security number, you'll be providing your ITIN. And also there's only so many companies that do allow individuals to apply without a social security number. So here we have, thanks to, let me see, novacredit.com. They've actually listed some of the best credit cards without SSN. And this, you'll see them down in the bottom. But a reminder, for most of these, you may need a cosigner. So you always want to call them. You always want to try to get, there are some without cosigners as well that you can get. So it just takes a little bit of research, calling the companies to see which ones require what. Do you need a cosigner? Can you do it with an ITIN number rather than a social? What are those requirements? Also, the other part you want to always remember is if you don't have a cosigner, your APR might be higher or your interest rate might be higher. So just things to look out for. So I know it was a little bit longer than we usually do, but I really wanted to get this information out to everybody. I think because financial literacy is really something that is not all the time talked about. And we, aside from our Rising Wednesday, I just want to bring light that we do have our new YouTube channel. We just launched a couple of weeks ago. We've uploaded some of our older videos or our previous Rising Wednesdays that we had published. But just go on YouTube, look for us whenever you have time for other for other recordings and other resources that we have available. Thank you all, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.